Hi guys, welcome back to Unfiltered. It's nice to have you guys back here. Sometimes what we call our limit isn't actually ours. It just belongs to where we are. Hear me out. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, how easy it is to mistake your environment for your capacity, to look at your life, your progress, your pace, and quietly conclude, this is as far as I can go. But what if that's not true? What if that ceiling you keep bumping into isn't built into you? It's built around you. So this isn't one of those conversations about pushing harder or chasing some unrealistic version of success. It's quieter than that, more honest. Because the truth is, contentment is beautiful. There's something deeply grounding about being at peace with your life, about not constantly needing more. But there is a big difference between being at peace and being too comfortable. And we don't talk about that enough. Because comfort, when it stretches too far, can quietly shrink your world. Not in obvious way, not in ways that alarm you, just slowly. Your dreams adjust, your standards soften, your curiosity fades into routine. And before you realize it, you are not exactly unhappy, but you're also not fully living, just existing in something that works. I like to say we only get one life, and yes, it could be worse, but it could also be better. That's tension, it actually matters. Because personally, I've had to meet different versions of myself at different points in my life. Not because I was confused or inconsistent, but because my environment kept changing, and every time it did, it showed me something new about myself, new priorities, new standards, new possibility I didn't even know existed before. There are things I'm doing now that I genuinely wouldn't have considered in a different season of my life. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I wasn't exposed, I probably wouldn't have started this podcast if I was still in a particular season of my life, My focus would have been elsewhere. My energy would have been spent differently. My sense of what mattered would have been completely shaped by that space. And that's the part that I want us to sit with today. How much of what we call choice is actually just environment? How much of what we believe is possible is limited by what we've seen, what we've been around, what feels normal? Because we really are products of our environment. Not in a fixed way, but in a very real one. Someone born into wealth moves through the world with a certain ease, not necessarily because they are better, but because their environment never taught them to doubt certain possibilities. And someone raised in survival learns a completely different language of life. Different rules, different instincts, different definitions of what's right, what's necessary, what's even achievable. Now, neither perspective is fully complete, they are just shaped. And that's why this isn't about aspiration. It's not about telling you to suddenly become more, do more, chase more. It's just a quiet invitation to consider something. Maybe the version of you are judging right now is operating inside a very specific environment. And maybe with a shift in that environment, not overnight, not magically, but gradually, there is more in you than you've been able to access. More clarity, more ambition, more courage, more range. Not because you've changed, but because your surroundings finally allowed you to. So maybe the question isn't, is this my limit? Maybe it's, what part of this is actually just where I am? And what might happen if where you are changes? I've been sitting with that, and if I'm being honest, this conversation doesn't end here for me. It actually feels like the beginning of something I've been avoiding for a while. So there's a series I don't know if there's anything like a podcast series, right? But like, I mean, we'll make the rules. So there's a series that has been in my mind, one that I've been pushing away, not because it isn't important, but because of how deep it goes, how personal it gets, how much it might stir things up, you know. Conversations about childhood, about the homes we grew up in and the ones we are still in, you know, and the ones we are in some ways trying to understand. You know, the quiet ways family shapes us, the role you played without choosing, first born, middle child, last, the one who held things together, the one who stayed quiet, the one who had to grow up too early, the kind of love you saw between your parents or the absence of it, what that taught you about connection, about safety, about what relationships are supposed to feel. Now, all these we are going to like talk about them, not in an analytical, distant way, but in the kind of way that makes you pause and think, oh, that's why I'm like this. I don't think we talk about these things enough, or maybe we do, but not like this, not gently, not honestly, not without trying to fix everything too quickly. So this is me opening that door slowly, carefully. We're going to be having a series on why we are who we are. And I'm not coming with answers, really. Just questions I think are worth sitting with, stories worth hearing, conversations I'm ready to have, even if they're uncomfortable. So, I'm looking forward to exploring this, and I think you might find parts of yourself in it too. I'm really glad you guys are still here, and I'm really glad to have anybody who's new here. As always, keep your hearts unfiltered, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.